Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of Peters Township Council to order for Monday, November 14th, 2022. Mr. Lauer, please call the roll.
Ms. Shanafeld?
I'm here.
Dr. Paraska?
Here.
Mr. Arcari?
Here.
Mr. Seigel?
Here.
Mr. Kozer?
Here.
Mr. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Ross?
Here.
Okay, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda will be approval of the minutes from October 24th.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carries 7-0. Special reports, Mr. Lauer.
Yes, I'd like to start off by speaking concerning Otto Szabo. Otto Szabo was a devoted member of the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority. Otto passed away on November 1st. Otto served on the authority for 22 years, and in 16 of those years, he served as the chairman of that. And one of the things that people always hear me say is that one of the things that distinguishes Peters Township from many other communities is the quality of the individuals that choose to serve on behalf of the residents of Peters Township. And in Otto's case, it wasn't just that Otto was a quality member of that board. He was absolutely devoted to the issues facing the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority. Any of us who had the opportunity to hear Otto speak at the board dinners that we used to have got a real education with regard to not only Peters Creek Sanitary Authority, but all the engineering aspects associated with treating sewage. The thing that I didn't know about Otto, and I only discovered as part of his obituary, is that Otto's service extended way beyond that which he provided for the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority. Otto was a member of the U.S. Army. He had risen to the rank of Brigadier General, and quite honestly, that was something that I never knew. I thought it was interesting when Otto finally had to leave his home on McCombs Road. He moved outside the community to get to a one-level house because of the needs of his wife. Otto then immediately signed up and became a member of the HOA for the housing development that he was in and became president of that organization as well. The thing that I think about Otto is that Otto was of that generation that valued civility, and Otto was the consummate gentleman. You know, we certainly we worked with Otto on problems he had with drainage on his home, and Otto's approach to that was always to be civil and understanding, and I think that's the same approach he took with everybody that he dealt with as a result of his role in Peters Creek Sanitary Authority. He certainly has done a lot for this community, and I don't think most people, given the nature of where his service was, would recognize that. But he's an individual that certainly made a real contribution. So.
Yeah, I recognized Otto way back before coming on council. With St. Benedict, he was always at Mass. Once I met him 13 years ago, every time he would walk past me, go into communion, he'd always pat me on the shoulder. And one thing that always stood out, his wife would be in front of him. He always had his hand on her shoulder, as if to let her know that he was there for her. And that was the kind of person that he was, just really bright guy, just a genuine, caring individual. I feel honored that I was able to know him.
Good evening, Council. Monica Merrill, 105 Walnut Drive, Venetia, in the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority watershed. I'm here because I wanted to speak about Otto. He was a man of exceptional energy and commitment. He and I met when I became a council person representing that district. The majority of the B district is serviced by Peters Creek Sanitary. He helped me learn about the workings of the authority, and we bonded over a mutual belief that Peters Township, Peters Creek Sanitary, should have its own sanitary facility. We had hoped to build that rather than join Clayton Municipal Authority. He was always very good about getting all his ducks in a row. He presented solid engineering arguments, solid financial arguments, projections about why it would make sense for Peters Creek Sanitary to build their own municipal sewer authority. I think sometimes he had a sense about all the development that was going to happen in Peters and Nottingham and Union, because that's a multi-municipal authority and it services multiple communities. Unfortunately, despite his arguments and some of the arguments we all put to make that happen, the DEP kiboshed the idea, so that never came to fruition. But he carried on, and as Paul said, he was chairman of that board for many, many years. And all of the work he did and all of his efforts were for the ratepayers of the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority. He did his due diligence on every issue, and once he made a decision, he could be pretty adamant about it.
That's probably an understatement.
And he didn't really care for any deviations. And maybe at times he tried to exert too much control. But it was never for personal glory or personal gain. He always had the ratepayers of the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority top of mind. Otto Szabo was a gentleman and a true community champion to whom we all owe a debt of gratitude. I count myself fortunate to have known him as a colleague and a friend. Hopefully he's resting in peace, but knowing him, he's probably up there giving some advice about how to reorganize heaven. Thank you for letting me speak. Oh, if I could mention, I don't believe anyone from Mr. Szabo's family's here. I had occasion to talk to Barb Szabo, his widow, this morning, and she was very gratified to know that we would do a small presentation for him. And she wanted to express her thanks for you recognizing his accomplishments and contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments they'd like to make? Seeing none.
The other thing that I wanted to report to council was a program that was offered by the Peters Township Library Foundation, the Peters Township Library. They have sponsored what they call Novel November for the last 5 years. The community this year was treated to a presentation by Andy Weir, and Andy Weir is a New York Times best-selling author and is most known for the novel The Martian, which had been turned into a movie. There was probably a group of over 400 people in attendance at the high school, and Mr. Weir talked not only about his novel, but also about the creative process that he uses to create those. I suggest that you mark your calendar for next year on November 2nd. The Library Foundation has already made arrangements for Victoria Schwab to be a guest of the Library Foundation. She, again, is a New York Times best-selling author. Her novel, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, has spent 37 weeks on the New York Times bestsellers list. So I think these kind of events are something that's unique in Peters Township and speaks well to the community.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks. Next item will be audience comments, which is an opportunity for a member of the audience to address council for up to 5 minutes on a non-agenda item. So, is there anybody? Sir?
Good evening. My name is Jim Van Lane. I've been a township president since 1980. I live on 126 Druid Drive. I'm here tonight trying to understand the cell tower edition of the 5G. I talked with Dr. Tom. I said I can get petitions. I can bring them before council. He said, no, come down and talk to you guys. And I'm trying to understand the process, because when I moved here in 1980, there was a tower up there. I was concerned about the tower. they called West Penn Power, and they said, it's a low voltage tower, it's only so high. If it ever did fail, it's not going to fail on your property. I said, I'm in. I love this township. Then about 5-6 years ago, I don't know the exact date, you put 4G up on the tower. The township residents were never consulted. There was never any letter that came out that says, hey, we're going to put a 4G cell tower out there. What are your thoughts? And some municipalities actually put a facade around those towers. They hide it like a giant pine tree. If you look at Fox Chapel in Bethel Park, they do that. Then, maybe 3 years ago, and occasionally through those years, equipment showed up on the street, and they would work on the tower. The last big thing with the 4G was they changed the antennas and added more of them. Just recently, a truck showed up. I figured, well, they're going to work on the tower. They are working on the tower. They're putting up 5G. My concerns are the aesthetics of that tower and what it does to the real estate value of the houses in the vicinity and the site of that tower. My other concerns is a scientific term called MFGs. It has to do with the radiation that comes off those towers. The initial tower, I believe, was somewhere around 13 MFGs. I have no idea what the 4G is. And now we're adding 5G that's supposed to be even more powerful. I did get in the internet and I thought, well, I need some help because I'm not the scientist here. So I looked up the negative effects of cell towers. The one was depressed real estate values. People do not want to live by cell towers. This one's right near Druid Drive. It's in the front yard of most of the properties. The other situation is, you'll bear with me. I apologize. Cell phone towers, along with things like power pylons, are major causes of loss of interest in property. A friend of mine works real estate and was asked about this and confirmed a large number of people give up on property if it's near a cell tower. There's also, and I can't lay my hands on it for some reason, here it is. 2 paragraphs. Of course, the biggest side effect of living near cell phone towers is increased risks of cancer. The World Health Organization has actually done quite a bit of research into the EMF, radiation, and cancer. In one of their most recent studies, they found a link between EMF exposure and cancer. Similarly, a smaller and more recent study by a Swiss research body found a link between EMF exposure and increased risk in leukemia, which would be a much bigger concern when living near a cell tower. A German study also found that living within 400 meters of a cell tower more than tripled the rates of cancer. Since I've lived in that neighborhood, we've had 2 deaths of cancer. We've had 5 total cancers. We have right now a lady going through Parkinson's. My wife is one of the 5 that has cancer now. It's a real concern to me. It should be a concern to the council. And you never notified.
That's council.
I understand, but you gentlemen are sitting behind a desk and you influence quite a bit of what they need to hear.
Okay.
And I will address.
Okay, I just didn't want you to
understand.
think that I was on council.
But from that standpoint, you sent out a notice and said the crane's going to be on our street and it's going to be closed. You had enough time to notice that, to give us that notice, but no notice that you're going to put another cell tower up there. And this one, being 5G, I am assuming, is a lot more powerful than 4G. I'm very concerned about the real estate value, but more concerned about the health. And I don't know what your process is, but I would certainly, if I try to put a storage barn on my property, close to the property line, I have to get the permission of my neighbors. That cell tower isn't my neighbor, my neighborhood. If anything you gentlemen can do to abate that and not allow at least 2 of them up there. The township is full of open ground. Simmons Farm property. The farm property is beside Simmons. The high school property with the golf course. All those are high elevation. Simmons is the highest one. Ours was the second highest one. Is there anything that you can do to stop this? Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Do you want me to address that?
Yeah, you go ahead, please.
So the state of current federal and state law is that when a cell phone provider co-locates at an existing site, they have a right to do that. And one of the reasons there was a gap in the work that was up there, because the way they are co-locating is with a pole that is located on that site. This antenna is not actually going to be held on the tower itself. And we were concerned whether or not that met the conditions of co-location. The township employs the services of Cohen Law Group, who specializes in this area, and it's their position that what they're doing there meets the Pennsylvania statute, and the municipality, as a result of that, has no control over whether or not that there's an antenna installed at that site. And so I don't think the township, either by federal or state law, can stop that antenna from being installed.
What the manager is saying is under the Co-Location Act, we looked at this. Initially, there's a permit issued, and the reason council doesn't see this is because there is no application to us other than a building permit, and if it's permitted by state law, the permit's issued. Mr. Zook actually pulled the permit while we wrestled with whether they fell within the act, and that's because we do have specialized counsel for this, it went to his office to look, because the act is a little unique in that once that, to your chagrin to some extent, once that power line is there, state law wants other things to go on top of it. Maybe not looking out for your best interest, but takes it out of the township's ability to do anything. Even though the township tried to, look and see if we could move this or stop this if needed, and we weren't able to.
There's other towers.
We can't control their selection, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, the determination as to where they locate is done by the cell phone provider, not by the township.
So from a health and well-being standpoint of the township, we have no say over the health and well-being and the depressed real estate value, which is going to lower taxes.
Yeah, the state law has jumped in and taken it out of the council's hands and said you're not allowed to weigh in and pull it away, even though, again, we tried and pulled it back to see if we could do something with it. And the assessment by specialized counsel that just deals with this says the statute's so broad that we can't do anything. So I think you reissued it, right?
Correct.
So how
It's going up to that.
how do townships get the facades put on the towers?
That I don't know.
Well, what we don't allow in Peters Township are single pole towers that are not co-located. So that issue, except in the industrial zoning district. So you will see, if you go down to the storage place off of Valley Brook Road, you'll see individual poles. What you won't see elsewhere in town are those individual poles. And so therefore, you don't find these things like trees and things like that in Peters Township. And personally, and I realize beauty's in the eye of the beholder, these 90-foot sequoias just stick out like a sore thumb in western Pennsylvania. We don't have trees of that height, so.
They have like clock towers, things like that, though, too. There's other avenues. Tony Brown, 123 Druid. There's 3 of us right there. I don't know how much discourse we can have. What's the logic, though, of putting 2 towers on top of each other? I'm on social media. I see that
there's a lot of gaps in places where we're not able to get good coverage, but they're putting one right on top of an existing one.
One is AT&T and one is Verizon. They're two different carriers.
But they all have the technology. I think you and I discussed that maybe the township is going to put in their own tower, at least the space.
The township has agreed with AT&T to co-locate a facility in Peterswood Park. AT&T will be providing sports lighting inside of Peterswood Park, and on that same pole, they'll put an antenna array.
But as I drive from here to Utah, these cell towers all switch. They provide service to no matter what company you belong to. So I still don't understand. I understand businesses that want to stay separate, but isn't there any way for us to interact with them?
No, because they actually, when you drive down the road, you're moving on a network. If you're on an AT&T network, you're moving from one AT&T antenna array to another AT&T antenna array.
GSM and CDMA, and they switch and work with each other. It's in the software.
I'm telling you, having spoke to Verizon
Right.
and AT&T, that's not the case up there, because I don't think they would be installing an antenna array.
So what stops a third or fourth antenna being put in that same location if we don't have any control over it?
I don't know that what would stop it from occurring. I think there's
West
a limited
Bend
number
Power
of providers.
West Bend Power could,
They could say no, they won't be
because they
saying
could
more.
say no
Yes.
Right.
to having another
Yes.
provider on there.
So do you guys interact with them to help them say no? Because they're obviously getting some kind of financial incentive for having things placed on their towers.
I don't know if that would be
Well,
our prerogative
but
to
the
do.
township actually prefers, its ordinance prefers co-location to individual towers being erected. And, and just to be clear, T-Mobile intends at the intersection of Rolling Hills Drive and Center Church Road to co-locate on an electrical tower there.
Well, the other issue then would be the parking. I don't know if we need to go into that. Ed knows very well. I gotta applaud Mr. Gromack. He put together within one day a Freedom of Information Act. Apparently, I've been very proficient in complaining about the Druid Hill. Dr. Porosco came out. Mr. Arcuri, Mr. Stiegel have all been involved. They've seen the PDF that was put together. Can I ask any questions? Do I even need to discuss this, or do you think it's going to happen?
Well,
It needs to be made no parking.
What I was going to say is I haven't, and if I can find it here, I'd actually,
He's looking up at the map on the screen.
let me find the image. I mean, this, if you want to understand the problem on Druid Drive, go to Google's Maps because it illustrates it well. And what you have there is, that's a landscaping company who no doubt is working on that property on the right-hand side. And as you approach the crest of the hill, you cannot see over it. So when Mr. Brown approached us about looking at this, we actually had Mr. Mudry take a look at this. In fact, Mr. Mudry is going to be at our next meeting, and I think it would be appropriate at that time to discuss this.
TPD.
He is the transportation engineer for the township.
Okay, yeah, I saw the report
Yeah.
that he turned in to Ed, Mr. Zemetis on 526.
Right.
I got like 20 police reports, and everybody says, here's the vehicle codes we're in violation of, or it's not 500 square feet, 500 feet of distance. This has to be made no parking for safety. The township would be liable if anything happens. My wife was within 3 feet last week of getting nailed, going around this.
So what we had done in response to that, we went out and surveyed the people where the no parking signs would be placed. And they are unanimous in opposition to that because they don't want no parking in front of their homes. So what I would propose that we do is to send out notices to those individuals and to Mr. Brown and the neighbors that are right beyond the no parking, because that's where the parking's going to move to, and have a discussion about this at the next meeting, and council can decide whether you want to.
Well, I think
pursue the no
discussions are
parking.
fine, but apparently from those reports created by the people that you pay, they've all said we're in violation of code this, code that, 75 PA 6109, 67 PA 212-114, constantly with 3351A. we are not in compliance with sightline there. It has to be made no parking. And the one guy mentioned, we're going to be liable. We're opening ourselves up a liability if we don't make it no parking.
Again, I would suggest to council that what would make sense is to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak to the issue, and that's why
So
I
this
would
has been going
propose
on
to do
for
it at the
20
next
years.
meeting.
I went back to Chief Frick. He said people shouldn't park there, but there's no parking signs there. The police officers are consistent. If we come out, we can't ticket anybody unless there's no parking there.
That's correct.
Talk to zoning.
Well, I'm just, I've not been engaged in the particular situation here. I can say this is not the single location in the township where that condition exists.
And it's exacerbated by the cell tower people. So it's one thing when they're doing the installs, they're out here 3 or 4 times a year. We're not contentious with them at all, but you'll see from the police reports, if you want to see the PDFs, they have parked trailers on the street, unmarked, dark, overnight. They leave equipment on the street. They park up over the hill. They have parked neighbors in. Today, God knows why, they had to go to a resident and run a water line to get water to do their work. They parked, and with permission, in my gravel parking lot, in my neighbor's lot. So whenever they're out, cars are up and down the street, parking over the hill, create the situation. With Mr. Zook and Mr. Lauer taking the lead on this in the last couple of weeks, at least they're finally putting out cones and they're moving the equipment off the road at night. That's helpful. But I think that we have to have a process that when they come in to do their work, how they report to you and get approval for what they're doing, and we make sure that they stick by the standards. They don't leave equipment out overnight. They don't create, they need to put a flagger up there. If we're not going to make this no parking, we need a flagman, and they should supply that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
So do I assume that council wants to put this on the next agenda?
Another citizen
Oh.
wanted to speak or two.
First off, my name is William Mers. Live at 119 Druid Drive. You know what's across the street from my house? That tower we're talking about. I did a little bit of work of my own, and some of this Jim already covered, so I'm not going to cover it again. But do you realize that within 3 miles of 119 Druid Drive, there are 33 towers, cell towers, and 52 antennas. All these things putting out the radio frequencies that Mr. Van Meen talked about. My question to you people is, to people of council, do we need another one? According to Mr. Lauer, we have no choice in the matter. It's all cast in concrete because West Penn says it's okay. What about the property owners? Where are our rights at? Do we throw them away because we moved here? We moved out here 35 years ago because we loved it, and we've been here ever since. And it's just appalling to me that utilities seem to have the right-of-way over to property owners and property rights. We have no say in what they do. I mean, we pay our taxes, and if that tower's up there, as Jim said, and I have numbers in here, I'll just emphasize what Jim said. 99% of people do not want to live by a tower. If there's a tower next to a house that they're considering, they see the tower, they say no. Property owners, okay, property values. Studies have been done that at minimum, if there's a tower in the neighborhood, and by the neighborhood, it could be as much as a kilometer. 20% of the people, or 20% of the value of that house is gone out the window. Bye-bye. Okay, that's what we're living with on Druid Drive. And as far as that goes, a bunch of other people in the township within 3 miles of where I live are going to be experiencing the same thing. Jim mentioned all the effects of the radiation and cancer and that. I'm not going to go into that. But what I'm going to go into, there was a survey of 1,000 people. I mentioned this before, but 94% said the nearby tower is going to say, I'm not interested in that property anymore. 95 said they would not opt to buy or rent a piece of property next to a cell tower. 79% of those people said under no circumstances would they ever purchase or rent a property within a few blocks of a cell tower. I mean, there's more in here. It's highlighted. I'm willing. I'll leave this information with council for their use and evaluation. And nothing in that one. Neighborhoods and cell towers. Okay. Another document that I'll leave with council to review, but most of what's here I've already said. 90% of people plus said, no way do I buy property near a tower, and if I do, it's going to be 20% less of what market value would be. And as Mr. Van Leen said, Township collects taxes. You keep putting up towers, you're going to be collecting fewer taxes. Even though I know the Township population is expanding, I think when I moved out here, we had about 5,000 residents. Now, what is it, 30, 35,000? Maybe you say, well, hey, they're building $1 million houses now instead of $200,000 houses. We're going to get our money anyway. Choice is yours, gentlemen. We live here, but we evidently gave up all our rights when the utilities come in and say, we don't have any control over our property. Thank you very much. Who would I do?
You could give them to me, and I'll
Paul, when AT&T and Verizon go to put up one of their cell towers on an existing West Penn line, when AT&T Verizon go to put up the cell towers on West Penn Tower, do they notify the township at all?
They do notify the township because they have to come in to get an administrative approval to do that.
So the one 4 years ago, when they put up a 4G tower, then you guys, I don't remember that occurring.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know when that antenna array was put up. I actually think it was put up before that, but I don't know that for a fact.
It's been up there for greater than 4 years.
Yeah, I don't remember how long it's been there, but it's been probably 6 or 7.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been quite a while.
It's been longer than that.
And our ordinance,
They've done maintenance.
that ordinance.
I remember that because I think there was some issue that we discussed about landscaping or something like that.
No, that was on a different tower, yeah. Yeah, you charged Michael with screening the tower is what you charged it with.
And was the West Penn Tower there prior to the development?
Oh, yeah, way before then.
Yeah,
In fact, the easement that they gave was way before.
Yeah, I mean, I brought that up when we were in another one of these meetings when West Penn Power came in and cut down all the trees. They took about 12 trees off my property. I had no rights whatsoever to those trees.
We lived through that throughout the township, sir, yeah.
Well, the thing about that, though, Mr. Lewis, I asked West Penn Power to explain to me how that electricity in that 138 kV line is going to jump 35 feet to my trees when it doesn't jump 5 feet from that wire to that steel tower. You know what response was I got from West Penn Power?
I don't, obviously.
I just gave it to you. None. I asked 3 or 4 different people. And that gets me back to something else that Mr. Lauer reminded me of. They have a permit, but if I build something, I have to have a permit and I have to display it. I have never seen for the last month.
What they get is not a
display.
building permit. What you're describing is a placard that's associated with a building permit.
Right. They don't have to.
They don't get a building permit.
Okay, and the other thing you reminded me of, do they have to notify the people in the neighborhood that they're doing this?
Well, the one thing that I will apologize for, because I think it's a failure on our part, is that the notice that we sent out was late. That notice should have been sent out to the residents ahead of time. But it would not have changed anything. It would have only informed you what was going to happen. It would not in any way giving the township or you any authority over or control over what's happening on that project.
Okay.
Because we don't have that authority.
The other thing, and you may...
You know, we're going to have to move on. We have a full agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. I'll talk to you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'll make this short. My name's Rob Deem. I am a McMurray resident, about 7 years. These folks from Druid have me beat by a lot, but same topic, but hopefully different solution. So I have been frustrated with cell phone service since I've moved here. The situation has been exacerbated as I've had to transition to remote work and working from home with the pandemic. It's so bad I can't take work calls. I have to put everything through Zoom and Teams and stuff like that. I tell people don't call my cell because we won't have an effective conversation. And so I wanted to know if it was me or Verizon, so I posted something on Nextdoor. It ignited a robust conversation, but it was a healthy and respectful and civil conversation, I'll say. But I think that there's just a lot of folks that are frustrated with the service, and it's becoming less of a nice to have. It's fewer and fewer people have landlines. It's their jobs, getting in touch with their family. All of this is really through cell phones, and so I know that you're all exploring solutions. I know that the folks at Druid Drive are affected by this in a negative way, and so I'm not saying and clearly there was towers on antennas on Druid Drive and they weren't helping me already, so I don't think adding another one's going to help me anymore either. So but I agree with a lot of the comments I think that there's a lot of this hunger for more information about this process and what our options are and how these options are being determined. It's a very critical subject to our community's infrastructure, and there's just a lot of discussion around it, and no one really knows how to be involved in working on that solution. And so that was really my ask, was coming into this and seeing how can we have more engagement on the subject, because it's something people are passionate about. Now, just one last thing, in that long thing of conversations on Nextdoor, multiple people, it was their assumption that Peters Township Council was sort of the impediment to getting improved coverage or building towers. And the Verizon store McMurray told me when I went to buy a new phone in hopes of improvement coverage, they said the phone won't help it, Peters Township Council won't. And I've watched your old videos. I know that you are looking for solutions. I know you're all great people, and I really applaud your service to the community. But I just think that I would love to sort of see how we can work together and just improve communication on this topic, because there's a lot of excitement and passion around it.
And I'm right there with you. I have no cell service at all in 2/3 of the street that I live on. So.
I have a black hole in my office. If I sit on my desk like this when I call, it's fine. But if I turn this way, I lose it.
So what's happening in town, just so you're up to date? There is the antenna array that is being installed in Druid by Verizon. There's an antenna array that is scheduled to be installed in Peterswood Park by AT&T. Along East McMurray Road at various locations, AT&T is putting small cell sites up. Then down Valley Brook Road till you get to Balabits, there'll be additional small cell sites. But the determination as to whether or not a cell tower or an antenna array is installed has nothing to do with council. It has everything to do with the cellular providers, and they make that determination where those are to be located. Your discussion with Verizon I find interesting, because if you were to go to the Upper St. Clair meeting, you would hear that same thing, and they're struggling with the same lack of service within inside their community. And I have no way to know this scientifically, but I can tell you something happened at the beginning of the year. Cell phone service in this community, as well as other places in the South Hills, has deteriorated substantially, and there's no explanation for why that is.
Okay, and just one last question. The decision to sort of ban the large fake sequoia trees, is that a permanent decision, or will that ever be revisited as in the future? It's
really a zoning decision. it's not the sequoia trees, it's individual poles, and whether council wants to do something with that is something I will be discussed somewhere down the road, but.
Is there a way to, as citizens, bring that up for topic for consideration in the future?
It's definitely something we can consider, but I mean, I'll caution you, you see the kind of pushback we have right now on something that we can't control.
Well, the thing I like about that is that it's could potentially be further away from like a residential area that already has power lines and stuff going through it. So it could be in the middle of a farm or something like that. So I think maybe there's an opportunity to meet in the middle somewhere. So that's my goal. So thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Hello again. I'll make this quick. I'm here to extend an invitation to all of you and to the people who are viewing to come to the Village of Venetia Light Up Night, Friday, December 2nd. The township, in the past, prior to pandemic, used to light up the Christmas tree at the library. After the COVID and all that, the process changed. There is a holiday event that they are having on Sunday. But this Village of Venetia tree lighting will be technically the only one in the township. There will be games and carols and activities at Wright's Church, the Venetia Community Center, and also the Wright House Museum, where they'll do soup and stroll this Sunday. There'll be the model railroad rooms will be open, which is a big draw. A lot of activities for kids, caroling, holiday kickoff. So please consider coming. Mr. Ross, that's your area. Hopefully we'll see you and your family, and many of the other of you and your family. So please bring the kiddies down, and then you can go party with the township on Sunday. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Any other audience comments? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into, looks like there's no unfinished business, so new business. First item will be award of a contract for gasoline and diesel fuel.
On October 6th, Shaycog Purchasing Alliance opened bids for fall commodities, including gasoline and diesel fuel. The bids for gasoline and diesel fuel are actually an incremental price over a price posted by Opus. There was only one bidder this year. Glassmere Fuel Service has been the contractor for Shaycog Communities for a number of years. It's my recommendation that Peters Township Council award a contract to Glassmere Fuel Services.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion is second. Any further discussion? Yeah, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0. Next item will be a resolution accepting a stormwater management facility from the Fieldstone Plan of Lots.
So Mr. Taylor, the developer of the Fieldstone Plan of Lots, has received a notice of termination from the Washington County Conservation District in relation to the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit that they issue for the sedimentation control inside that plan. This is being converted over to be a permanent stormwater management facility. It is ready to be accepted by the township, and it's my recommendation that Peters Township Council approve Resolution 110122 accepting
So
this.
moved.
Second.
Okay, the only issue with this, Paul, looking at the proposed resolution, it references Whispering Pines in the beginning, so that'll have to be corrected.
We'll get that corrected.
How did I miss
All
that?
right, so a motion and a second, assuming that correction is made. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0. C will be, item C will be approval of the Hoffbauer subdivision.
This is just a lot line shift.
This is a lot line
It's an
shift, and that
existing lot.
illustrates that shift.
I'll make a motion that we approve for recording purposes, the Hoffbauer subdivision is shown in the drawings prepared by Harshman CE Group LLC dated August 2nd, 2022, subject to any conditions that are reflected by, you haven't, I'm assuming there are some, right, Ed?
Peters Creek still has to approve it.
Right. Other than that, I move that we approve it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0. Item D will be approval of the Hamlet of Springdale Plan Number 5, Second Amendment.
So one of the things that we do as a matter of course in developments is that we require as-built plans be drawn. when the as-built plan was drawn for this development, what was discovered is that a storm sewer easement that was located behind these homes, that the storm sewer was actually located outside of that easement. So what this plan simply does is to move that easement at the location where the storm sewers were actually installed.
Move we approve the Hamlet of Springdale Plan Number 5, Second Amendment, as shown on drawings prepared by Harshman CE Group LLC, dated September 15, 2022, for Benjamin Marcus Homes LLC.
Question I have is, are we culpable with our inspection process that didn't catch this?
I don't know how you would know this until such time as someone actually goes out and surveys it.
Well, I could see.
But I think what
I
is
could see it
happening...
being a road or something like that. I don't want to see a condition emerge.
And I think what's happened here is, and Mark can correct me, I think what they've done is to move the storm sewers to accommodate additional decks and things like that behind these homes. And so I think what they did was appropriate. I would have hoped that this would have come in sooner. What's now required is that each of those homeowners sign this plan. So
I would just say, Bob, that when we have our consulting engineers do inspection on these developments, they're not checking surveying, they're spot checking. We have the storm sewers televised at the end to make sure that there's no defects before we accept them. But in a case like this, there would be no way for them to know, and they're not going to go survey it. I mean, we're not, and I think that would introduce liability if we actually had them survey it. So,
I'm not suggesting surveying, but if you look at the easement and its proximity to the house on the right.
Well, you got to remember the houses weren't built. All the infrastructure goes in before there's any houses built. So it's really hard to get a frame of reference when you're in the field.
Okay.
So I don't.
But
I'll back off of that then.
But I will say what it does demonstrate to me is that our process works. The fact that we require as-built drawings remedies this situation, so that in fact we have an easement where we can actually maintain that storm sewer.
All right, let's continue.
Did somebody second that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to recuse myself.
All right, 601 then. Item E will be authorization to enter into a cost-sharing agreement with Waller Landscaping for improvements to Buckeye Street.
Well, first, I should let you know that Mr. Waller is here in the audience with us. At the meeting on May 23rd, Peters Township Council authorized the Township Manager to enter a discussion with Waller Landscaping for the purpose of improving and maintaining Buckeye Street. Just to refresh your memory, Buckeye Street is a private road. Peters Township is an adjacent property owner. It's Mr. Waller's landscaping supply business is located, is accessed down Buckeye Street, but Mr. Waller does not have property that abuts the road. We've had a problem here with regard to the condition of that road and from the township's perspective, what it does in terms of Valley Brook Road, that traffic and bringing dirt and mud out onto the street. So the idea was to partner with Mr. Waller for the purposes of improving it so we could address that issue. If we were not an adjacent property owner, quite frankly, we wouldn't be here. We had entered into negotiations. Mr. Waller has a very busy schedule and a busy business, and moved ahead with the improvements that we had talked about without this agreement being in place. That being said, it's still my recommendation because I think it makes sense for these improvements to have occurred. What has happened at the apron here is that this is paved, and it's paved back approximately 110 to 120 feet. There's this road rises up and then goes over a hill, and the thought was by doing that we could not track as much dirt and mud out onto the road as what's occurring right now. In the back of the road, if this, what's on the left-hand side, this is what the road looks like beyond the landscaping supply, and that was what the road kind of looked like in front of the landscaping supply. What has occurred going towards Buckeye is that there's been a tremendous volume of milled asphalt put in. The road has been widened. In fact, I think right now Buckeye Street's probably the widest street in Peters Township, and it's in addition to that, there were cross pipes put in to improve the drainage. One of the things to keep in mind in considering whether or not we participate is that that road to the left, if you continue up that, there is access to the Montour Trail. There's a trailhead there, but more importantly, there's a home back there. And this is probably the primary means of ingress and egress to that home. We had a medical emergency at that house, and it became very difficult to be able to get back to them. So I think, in that regard, this improves that situation for that Peters Township homeowner. And I don't know whether Mr. Waller wants to add anything, but it's going to be my recommendation that the township enter into an agreement with Mr. Waller for the purposes of improving the road, and that the township's contribution towards that process be $24,800.
Well, we had an extensive discussion of this previously, and I think, do you need a motion to concur with that? I propose the motion that we do accept the agreement.
I'll second.
Give a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I had a question. Is this an ongoing agreement, or is this just a one-time deal?
It's a one-time deal, but I can tell you, in terms of the apron in the front, it's our intention to maintain that apron in terms of patching puddles and things like that.
Based on when we discussed.
Yeah,
this.
we've left it private in the agreement.
Okay.
That one house, can emergency vehicles get there from Hidden Valley Road?
No, it's actually, this is hard to believe, but that road to the left
It's better than the other
is
one?
much better than coming down Lindenwood.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0.
Now, we are going to get this one signed by all parties and recorded, right? So we have an original recorded?
We could do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry, I didn't mean to
that's all
interrupt.
right. Item F will be resolution adopting the Washington County Hazard Mitigation Plan.
The Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 is a federal act that establishes standards for pre-disaster hazard mitigation programs. It also requires that a plan be adopted as a requirement to be able to access federal post-disaster hazard mitigation grant program. This plan has been developed by Washington County. It requires acceptance and approval by individual municipalities. It's my recommendation that the council approve resolution 110222 adopting the Washington County mitigation plan.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0. Payroll and bills.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the payroll and bills. I find them to be in order. I move they be approved as submitted. Come on, people, it's November. Thank you.
Okay, with a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 7-0. Paul, any of these correspondence that we would like to discuss?
No, I didn't believe so.
Okay. Minutes. Anybody have any discussion items on the minutes? Bob, is it? Okay. All right, miscellaneous.
One of the things that I would like to mention to council, and we don't need to decide this tonight, but we need to start to think about what that process is going to be. The loop road around Rolling Hills Park is going to need a name, and I don't know how it is.
That was the name.
You want to call it Loop Road?
Well, actually, that's interesting.
It's a loop.
It's actually interesting because the reason this even comes up is I saw a purchase order for street signs that said Loop Road, and I thought, I think we could probably do better. And so if council wants.
Okay, or Curie Road, how's that?
That'll do it for me. But we need to think about it, and we need to come up with a process by which we determine what that name's going to be.
Did we do a contest for the other road?
Oh, be careful, because whenever you have a contest, whoever wins it.
I think we just leave it at Loop Road.
You can't leave it Loop Road, sounds too generic. I think we think about some individual who's had an impact on this township and we name it after them. Either that or we come up with some other golf course theme to match Rolling Hills Drive. You know, we already got, do we have a fairway drive already, or?
Yes.
We definitely
We have a clubhouse drive.
Bogey circle.
We're not going to decide.
We're not going to decide it tonight.
Yeah.
The one thing that I included in your docket, this time of the year, Mr. Gromick goes out and surveys everyone whose terms are coming up. There are a number of individuals who have decided not to seek reappointment, including someone on the Cable Television Board, the Library Board, the Park and Rec Board, the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority, and 2 positions of the Youth Commission. We have advertised for those positions, and when we have those results in, I'll let you know. But we need to come up with a process by which those people are going to be appointed. The other thing that I wanted to point out to you is that next year our solid waste services contract is up. And so in the spring of the year, we will be outbidding that service. But to give you an idea of what may be happening there, the North Hills Council of Governments, which represents 7 communities, bid out their trash contract. And the increased rate to residents was 33% higher. The other thing about it is, in the North Hills, as is the case here, there was unlimited garbage collection. Waste Management was the only bidder and indicated that they would only pick up 1 container from each house as opposed to unlimited garbage service. They also put restrictions on bulk items, which are readily picked up in Peters Township. So it's a forewarning that I think next year when this bid comes in, the cost of solid waste collection is going to go up dramatically.
Well, I think we were expecting that based on the last time. Do you think there's any chance we'll find somebody that'll take glass again?
Actually, they're taking glass again, but not in Peters Township yet, but glass is once again being recycled.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not in Peters Township.
I thought it was coming though, a part of the Shaycog or whatever.
What's that?
I thought it was.
They're talking about putting it back in.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Paul, one thing notice when we look at things such as interconnections and the Mount Blaine Gate, we've always had our department heads from public safety, public works, and whatnot provide us with their input on those items. And the one thing that I haven't seen yet, and being that it's going to be coming up soon, I'd like to see the input from those department heads on from what they think the aquatic center is going to do to their departments. From the police chief, what he thinks it's going to do in terms of crime. From the fire chief and the ambulance service, increases in medical emergencies, traffic citations, parking, manpower. How are we going to be stretched manpower-wise? It seems like that's the one, well, besides we don't have operational costs yet. So those are the 2 things that I think we need to see before we entertain any of the bids. So
I'll add that to the list of things for the discussion in January.
Gary, I have a couple of questions, or one is a comment I asked Paul earlier in the day if we had any foreseeable luck in thinking in terms of McMurray, or you said Valleybrook?
Valleybrook's all torn up too.
From the gas company's endeavors, and apparently that's out the window for being repaved this fall. So we're going to have to endure that through the winter time.
Yeah, and in the case of Valleybrook, the work is continuing on right now.
And another question I have, and it sort of fits into the solid waste question, we started the leaf pickups, and those leaf pickups from the bags is done by Waste Management, or is
Yes.
that a township activity?
No, that's waste management.
But the pickup of bulk with a vacuum machine is the township. And the issue that I noticed this time was a lot of people had bags out for their regular collection day. And of course, it's poured rain since then, and the bags have deteriorated. Is that the day that they should anticipate the pickup of leaves?
That's the date that Waste Management has agreed to pick them up. Two things this year, like for instance today, Waste Management was down 8 drivers. They're having a really difficult time being able to staff their vehicles. So you have that. And the other thing that occurred this year, it seems as though the leaves came down at a very compact time. And I think Waste Management, in addition to the fact that they've been short-staffed, has had a difficult time collecting the amount of leaves that have come down at the same time. So.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No.
I was just going to ask, it was my recollection that all those leaves, didn't they go to St. Clair?
They go to Upper St. Clair. We have a joint program with
The
them where they're
composting,
composted at a site off of Boyce Road.
If need be, could we do that in-house?
No.
You don't want to pick up all those
No,
bags.
Frank, this arrangement works well.
No. I'm not saying with Upper St. Clair.
Oh, meaning collectively?
With
No.
the garbage collection company.
The only way this works is that they're collecting them and placing them in compactors. The volume of leaves that you would put in a truck, you couldn't pick up this town with all the people.
I don't want to get rid of them that way. Yeah, I was just asking.
Does anybody have any items for the next agenda other than what we've discussed? Okay, that being the case, I believe we have an executive session. Meeting will be adjourned.